He wrote a horrible thing against the Quran and Islam about what? 10, 15 years ago? 15? Anybody remember that? Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verses. Does anybody know what religion Mr. Rushdie was? He was a Muslim, non-Muslim, right? From India. He wrote this thing, and yet he grew up in a Muslim society. The one thing that they didn't put on all the news, by the way, was the fact that this was an internal problem. This was Muslims talking about Muslims. They tried to make it look like he was some other religion, and they had to protect him. You remember that? Maybe some of you are not old enough to remember it. The Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran, they're Shiite Muslims, put out a $5 million, started at $1 and they upped it to $5 million for his head. And he's still living to this day, by the way. But the point was, look how serious the Muslims are. On one event, I was in Ohio, addressing a congregation there, a very large group in the university, actually, and there were a lot of Christians, and they wanted me to turn it into a debate. They had a Baptist minister with me. And I told them flat out, I don't have time for that. If you want a dialogue and you want to talk, we can talk and I can talk. There's no problem. But we're not going to debate an issue. I'm not going to take a position and you're going to take a position and then see which one of us is a better debate. Because first of all, I'm going to beat you. I will beat you in the ground on any debate you want to go, or else I won't debate it. I'm not stupid. I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to know everything about you. And when you open your mouth, I'm going to do every little trick there is, every little golfer trick there is to make you miss your shot. Because that's what debate's for. But I don't have time for that. This is not about which one of us is a better celebrity speaker. This is about what's truth and what's not. And I told him that flat out. I said, you are welcome to sit here. If you've got something to say, you're welcome to say it. But if you turn it into a debate, I'll beat you in the ground. Figuratively speaking, of course. I'm a lovable old guy. I'm Islam's answer to Santa Claus. But anyhow. But seriously, you know what? He understood what I meant. He didn't do it. He was very nice. He said nice things. I said nice things. We were okay. At the end, though, some of the people started trying to throw stuff up, even at him or me, either one. So I just asked a question. I said, can I have a microphone? Yeah, okay. So let me ask a question. How many Christians we got with us? Okay, a bunch of them raised their hand. I said, when's the last time you heard a good old joke about Christmas? Some Christmas joke. That time of the year. Oh, yeah. A good old joke about Easter. Some jokes about Jesus. You know the joke about Jesus? What is it? Yeah, okay. And the joke about the rabbi and the priest and the joke about God when he... oh, yeah. Jokes about the Bible. You know how serious it is in Islam for you to tell a joke about any of those subjects? I'm talking about the subjects I mentioned. I'm not saying Quran now. Listen to me. We don't joke about the Bible. We do not joke about any of the prophets in the Bible. That's not funny to us. And in London, when they had that thing about running around half naked, I forget the name of the show, and they tried to portray Jesus as some kind of a gay, as they call it, homosexual, it was the Muslims who got out in the streets and protested that play. Then the Christians joined them. Because we believe in Jesus, peace be upon him, as a real prophet, as a real miracle birth, as a sign from Almighty Allah, and that his mother was a virgin and she didn't need any husband hanging around named Joseph to cover her story. And we don't think it's funny at all when people make jokes about God. We consider that disbelief. We don't think it's funny at all to make jokes about the Quran, but I think you already understood that in my mention of Salman Rushdie. We don't think it's funny to say anything about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam unless you say peace be upon him. We don't accept people to say his name. We don't like people to do that. Not because we consider him to be God. We don't. That's blasphemy. But because we consider to him to be a person who personally sacrificed this world and everything in it and stayed very austere through his entire life and suffered a lot just to be sure that this message stayed pure until this day today. And now I need to mention to you what the message is. Because really that's the only reason I came. There's a God. He has a purpose for what he does. And he didn't create all this for his purpose. There's a book that's still extant. You can go read it yourself. If you know the Arabic language, you can read it. If not, somebody can help you. But I'll help you with the most important part, inshallah, God willing, which is the verse that he said, the purpose of life. Do you know your purpose of life? Do you know why you're here? Do you know why you're walking on this earth? Do you know why you were created? Well, the answer's in the Quran. Chapter 51, verse 56. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. He says, I only created you guys to worship me alone, without any partners. This is the commandment which is given in the Old Testament, in the book of Exodus, the book of Deuteronomy. It's mentioned over and over throughout the Old Testament. It's mentioned in the New Testament in the book of Mark, chapter 12, verse 29. It's mentioned throughout the Quran over and over and over, and throughout the sayings of Muhammad so many, many times. And by the way, it's also mentioned in all of our Friday speeches that we give, every single sermon. There's nobody to worship except God alone. He has no partners. So if you agreed with that, then we're in agreement. Why bother to argue? If you think people do bad things in the name of religion, what was your first clue? That's one of the first things people learned a long time ago. That if you can control a man's religion, you can control his mind, you can control his heart, and more important, you can control his pocketbook. And not from Adam until the last century did they come up with something that's as good as controlling religion. But in 1950, it came out before that, but in 1950 it started becoming real popular. And they like it even better than religion. It's called television. And trust me, they use it for the same purpose today. So if you walked in here with a problem about Islam, I suggest you consider what Islam really is. If you got a problem with Muslims, then I suggest that you take them aside to somebody and work it out. Because Muslims don't represent Islam when they're not acting according to its teachings. Make sense? Okay, I know we got some questions. I hope I got some answers. So I'd like for you, if you haven't done so already, to go ahead and write them down. And hold the card up. Somebody will pass down through the aisles and pick up the card. And then we'll see what we can do with that. Oh, by the way, make them easy questions. And write pretty for me, because I can read reading, but I can't read writing. Okay, we got the first question up. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Could you please explain more about the concept of evil? Thank you, and thank you for the question. I like that. The concept of evil in Islam is anything which Allah has ordered us not to do. Immediately is an evil thing. Anything he hates, anything he told us not to do, or even anything that he frowns on can be an evil act. Some evil acts are not punishable by big things, but still they don't rack up real good with you in the law. For instance, some of the scholars consider that certain kinds of, like smoking a pipe or something like that's not really that bad. It's considered an evil, but to some people minor. To me, I don't like it at all. Can't stand the smell of it, so I'd rule it if I was doing that. Big time. But anyhow. So anything that's evil is things that are forbidden to do. Islam has a whole long list, not just 10 commandments. But by the way, how many of you think that the Bible only has 10 commandments? How many really believe?